I still remember the exact moment my world tilted on its axis. It wasn't dramatic like in the movies, no sweeping orchestral music or slow-motion glances. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late June, and I was carrying groceries into our family's beach house when I saw him standing in our driveway, backlit by the setting sun, laughing at something my brother Jake had said. Ethan Morrison, my brother's best friend since middle school, the guy who'd been a constant presence at our dinner table, our family vacations, our Christmas mornings for the past 8 years. The guy I'd trained myself not to look at too long, not to think about too much, not to want. "Little Bennett's home?" Ethan called out, using the nickname that had stuck since I was 14 and he was 16. I was 22 now, had just graduated college with honors, had a job offer waiting in the city, but to him, I'd always be Little Bennett. "Not so little anymore," I shot back, trying to keep my voice steady as I walked past them. At 6 feet tall, I'd finally caught up to both of them, though Ethan still had a way of making me feel small with just a look. "Mom said you're staying the whole summer," Jake asked, following me inside with his own bags. "Thought you'd be eager to start that fancy consulting job." I set the groceries on the kitchen counter, buying myself a moment before turning around. Deferred until September, figured I'd spend one last summer here before real life kicks in. What I didn't say was that I'd engineered this entire summer specifically because I'd heard Ethan would be here too. He just finished his master's degree in architecture and was taking a few months off before starting at a prestigious firm in Chicago. This was my last chance, my final summer, to figure out if these feelings I'd been harboring for years were real or just some prolonged adolescent crush. It was a terrible idea. I knew it was a terrible idea. But at 22, with my whole carefully planned life stretching out before me, I wanted one reckless thing, one summer of possibility. "That's awesome, man," Ethan said, appearing in the doorway. He'd cut his dark hair shorter since I'd last seen him at Christmas, and there was a new intensity in his green eyes that made my stomach flip. "Jake and I are renovating the boathouse. Could use an extra pair of hands if you're interested." This was how it always was with Ethan. Easy, natural, like we were just friends, just his best friend's little brother, nothing more complicated than that. And maybe we were, maybe that's all we'd ever be. "Sure," I heard myself say, "sounds good." Jake clapped me on the shoulder. "Perfect. We start tomorrow at 8, don't be late, Little Bennett." That night, I lay in my childhood bedroom, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars I'd stuck to the ceiling when I was 10, and wondered what the hell I was doing. This wasn't me. I didn't chase impossible things. I was the responsible one, the planner, the kid who'd color-coded his college applications and never missed a deadline. But Ethan Morrison had been my impossible thing since I was 15 years old and finally admitted to myself why I couldn't stop thinking about him. 7 years of carefully constructed indifference, of dadding other people, of pretending my heart didn't stutter every time he walked into a room. One summer, that's all I was giving myself. One summer to either get over him or figure out if there was any chance he felt the same way. I fell asleep to the sound of waves crashing against the shore and Ethan's laugh drifting up from the deck below, and dreamed of things I'd never let myself want. The renovation project started innocently enough. The boathouse had been neglected for years, and Jake had this vision of turning it into a guest house, something our parents could rent out or let friends use. Ethan, with his architecture degree, had drawn up actual plans, professional ones with measurements and material lists and a timeline. "You really went all out," I said that first morning, studying the blueprints he'd spread across the workbench. "If you're going to do something, do it right," Ethan replied, and I felt the weight of his gaze on me. When I looked up, he was studying me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You've changed, Bennett. College was good to you." There was something in his tone that made my pulse quicken, but before I could respond, Jake burst through the door carrying a circular saw. "Let's do this thing," my brother announced, and the moment shattered like glass. The days fell into a rhythm. We'd work from morning until mid-afternoon, breaking for lunch and swimming in the lake. I learned that Ethan was meticulous with measurements, that he hummed while he worked, usually old rock songs from the 70s. I learned that he took his coffee black, that he had a scar on his left shoulder from a surfing accident in college, that he got quiet and focused when he was problem-solving. I learned 100 small things I had no business learning, each one settling into my chest like stones, weighing me down with want. "You're starring again," Jake said one afternoon when Ethan had gone to grab more supplies from the hardware store. I nearly dropped the hammer I was holding. What? My brother gave me a long look, wiping sweat from his forehead. At Ethan, you've been weird around him all week. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. Jake and I had never talked about this. He knew I was gay. I'd come out to the family 3 years ago, right before starting college, but we'd never discussed it in detail. It was just accepted, filed away as a fact, like my peanut butter allergy or my preference for horror movies. I'm not, I started, but Jake held up a hand. Look, I'm not blind and I'm not mad or whatever, just... He ran a hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable. Just be careful, okay? Ethan's going through some stuff right now. What kind of stuff? The question was out before I could stop it. Jake looked like he regretted saying anything. Not my story to tell, just trust me on this. The timing's complicated. Before I could press him further, we heard Ethan's truck pulling up the gravel drive. Jake gave me one more meaningful look, then turned back to the wall he was framing. Conversation over. But I couldn't let it go. What stuff, what complicated timing, and why did Jake feel the need to warn me off? That night I found Ethan sitting on the dock, feet dangling in the water, beer in hand. The moon was nearly full, painting everything in silver and shadow. Room for one more? I asked. He patted the space beside him without looking up. Always. I sat down, leaving a careful 6 inches between us, and accepted the beer he pulled from the cooler. For a while, we just sat there in comfortable silence, listening to the crickets and the gentle lap of water against the posts. Jake thinks I'm being weird around you, I finally said, surprising myself with my honesty. Ethan took a long drink. Are you? Maybe. I picked at the label on my bottle. We've known each other a long time, but I feel like I don't really know you. Does that make sense? He was quiet for so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he said, what do you want to know? Everything, I thought, every secret, every scar, every moment that made you who you are. Why architecture? I asked instead. A small smile played at his lips. Safe question. Starting easy. He leaned back on his hands, tilting his face toward the stars. My dad wanted me to be a lawyer like him. My mom wanted me to be a doctor like her. I wanted to build things. Create spaces where people could feel at home, you know. There's something honest about architecture. It's either structurally sound or it's not. It either works or it doesn't. No gray area, I said. Exactly. He turned to look at me then, really look at me, and I felt it like a physical touch. Unlike most things in life. My breath caught. There was something in his eyes, something raw and uncertain that I'd never seen before. We were close enough that I could see the silver flecks in his green irises, count the faint freckles across his nose. Ethan, I started, but he was already pulling back, the moment breaking. It's late, he said, standing up and offering me a hand. Big day tomorrow. Jake wants to start on the loft. I let him pull me to my feet, trying to ignore the electricity where our hands touched. Yeah, okay. We walked back to the house in silence, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something important had almost happened, some truth almost spoken. But almost wasn't enough. Almost was just another word for not quite, not yet, maybe never. That night I heard him on the phone in the guest room next to mine, his voice low and tense. I couldn't make out the words. But the tone was clear. He was arguing with someone. When he finally hung up, I heard something hit the wall, not hard enough to damage anything, but with enough force to speak of frustration. I lay there in the dark, wondering about Ethan Morrison's secrets, wondering if I'd ever be brave enough to share my own. The 3rd week of June brought rain, the kind of relentless summer storm that turned the lake choppy and dark and made working in the boathouse impossible. We were trapped inside the main house, restless and bored, and the forced proximity was doing dangerous things to my carefully maintained composure. Ethan had been different since that night on the dock, more careful around me, maintaining distance when we worked, always making sure Jake was between us. It should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like a loss. Movie marathon? Jake declared after lunch, sprawling across the couch. Bennett, grab the good snacks from the pantry. Ethan, you're in charge of picking something that doesn't suck. I was rummaging through the pantry when I heard my phone buzz with a text, then another, then 5 more in rapid succession. My ex Marcus, we dated for most of senior year, broken up right after graduation when he'd wanted to do long distance and I'd known I couldn't, shouldn't, Not when my heart belonged to someone else, someone impossible. Marcus, I miss you, Marcus. I know you said you needed space, but Marcus, can we talk, please? Marcus, I'm in the area next week. Coffee, Marcus Bennett. I was staring at my phone, trying to figure out how to respond, when Ethan appeared in the doorway. Everything okay? He asked. I quickly locked my screen. Yeah, fine, just ex-boyfriend drama. Something flickered across his face too quickly for me to identify. The guy from your Instagram, Marcus. I was surprised he remembered. I'd only posted a few pictures of us together and I'd archived most of them after the breakup. You follow my Instagram? Jake shows me stuff sometimes. He leaned against the doorframe, hands in his pockets. He seemed nice, the boyfriend. Ex-boyfriend, I corrected, maybe too quickly. And yeah, is just wrong timing. Story of my life, Ethan muttered, so quietly I almost missed it. What? He shook his head. Nothing, come on, Jake's getting impatient. We ended up watching some action movie neither of us cared about, the rain hammering against the windows, thunder rolling across the lake. I sat in the armchair while Jake and Ethan took the couch, but I could feel Ethan's eyes on me throughout the movie, quick glances when he thought I wasn't looking. Halfway through, Jake fell asleep, mouth open, snoring softly. Ethan grabbed a blanket and draped it over him with a gentleness that made my chest ache. He sleeps through everything, I whispered. Always has. Ethan settled back on his end of the couch. Remember that time in high school when we convinced him he'd slept through an earthquake? I laughed quietly at the memory. He called the news station to complain they hadn't issued a warning. We're terrible friends. The worst. The movie played on, but neither of us was watching anymore. The silence between us felt heavy, charged with things unsaid. Can I ask you something? Ethan said finally. My heart rate kicked up. Sure. Why'd you really come back this summer? Jake said you had job offers, opportunities in the city. Why defer all that? I could have lied, should have lied. Instead, I found myself saying I needed to figure something out. Did you figure it out? I met his eyes across the dim room, working on it. The power chose that moment to flicker and die, plunging us into darkness except for the gray storm light filtering through the windows. Jake snorted in his sleep. I should grab some candles, I said, standing up. I'll help. We fumbled our way to the kitchen and I was pulling candles from the emergency drawer when the next crack of thunder shook the house. I jumped, and suddenly Ethan was there, steadying me with a hand on my arm. Easy, he said softly. We were close again, too close, and I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. His hand was still on my arm and neither of us was moving. Bennett, he said, and my name sounded different in his mouth, weighted with something I didn't dare name. I need to tell you something. My heart was hammering. Okay. He opened his mouth, closed it again, his hand tightened on my arm. Power's back, Jake's voice boomed from the living room and the lights blazed to life. Ethan dropped my arm like he'd been burned and stepped back so quickly he nearly knocked over the candle holder. Good, he said, his voice rough. That's good. He left the kitchen without looking at me and I stood there alone, surrounded by unlit candles, wondering what he'd been about to say. The storm broke on a Friday, leaving the world washed clean and bright. Jake had to drive into town for a work call. He'd been consulting remotely all summer, which meant Ethan and I were alone for the first time since the almost moment in the kitchen. We worked in loaded silence, the boathouse echoing with the sounds of hammering and sawing. The loft was taking shape, and Ethan's vision was becoming reality. Exposed beams, large windows overlooking the lake, a space that felt both rustic and modern. Hand me that level, Ethan asked, and I passed it to him, careful not to let our fingers touch. He checked his measurements, adjusted a beam, checked again. Perfect, can you hold this steady while I drill? I moved to brace the wood, which meant standing close to him, close enough to smell his cologne mixed with sawdust and summer sweat. He leaned in to drill, and I felt the heat of his body against my back. Little to the left, he murmured, and I shifted. The drill whirred, my hands shook slightly against the wood. Steady, Ethan said, and I couldn't tell if he was talking about the beam or me. When he finished, we both stepped back quickly, but the tension lingered in the air between us like humidity before a storm. I'm grabbing water, I announced, practically fleeing to the cooler outside. I was standing on the dock, gulping down ice water and trying to calm my racing heart when I heard footsteps behind me. "We need to talk," Ethan said. I didn't turn around. "About what?" "You know what?" He moved to stand beside me. "About whatever this is." I kept my voice neutral, even though my hands were shaking. "Bennett, I'm not blind and I'm not stupid." I finally looked at him, his jaw was tight, his eyes stormy. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't do that, don't lie to me." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "The way you look at me sometimes, the way you've been acting all summer, I'm trying to figure out if I'm reading this completely wrong or if... Or if what?" My voice came out sharper than intended. "Or if you feel it too." The world seemed to stop. "Feel what, Ethan?" He turned to face me fully. "This thing between us, pull, tell me I'm crazy, tell me I'm imagining it." My throat was tight. "You're not crazy." Something fierce and desperate flashed in his eyes. "How long?" "How long what?" "How long have you?" He gestured between us, seemingly unable to finish the sentence. I could have lied, should have lied, but I was so tired of lying, since I was 15. He looked like I'd punched him. 7 years. Give or take. "Jesus, Bennett," he turned away, gripping the back of his neck. "Why didn't you say something?" A laugh burst out of me, brittle and sharp. "Are you serious? You're my brother's best friend, you're straight, you were dating Sarah all through college, then Jessica, then..." "I'm not straight," he interrupted quietly. The world tilted again. "What?" "I'm not straight," he repeated, meeting my eyes. "I'm bisexual, I have been my whole life, I didn't come out because my parents are conservative as hell and it was easier to just date women and not deal with it. I couldn't breathe, but all those girlfriends were real, those relationships mattered to me. I can be attracted to women, but I'm also attracted to..." He stopped, swallowed hard, "to men." "How long have you known that I was bi?" "Since high school." He gave me a sad smile. "That I was attracted to you specifically, about 3 years." The dock seemed to sway beneath me. 3 years. "You came home for Thanksgiving your sophomore year, you'd changed, grown up, and you were talking about this guy you were seeing, some pre-med student, and you were so animated and happy, and I felt..." He laughed humorlessly. "I felt jealous, of some college kid I'd never met, that's when I knew." "But you never said anything." "How could I? You're Jake's little brother, you were 19, still in school. I was 21 and supposed to be the responsible one. And even if none of that mattered, I was terrified of messing everything up, my friendship with Jake, your family, all of it." I was reeling, trying to process this complete rewiring of reality. "So what changed? Why now?" "Because I'm moving to Chicago in 2 months," he said, and there was something broken in his voice. "Because this is my last chance, because I've spent 3 years trying to get over you and it's not working." My hands were shaking. "Ethan, I know the timing's terrible, I know it's complicated, but I had to tell you. I couldn't let another summer go by without you knowing that when you look at me like I hung the moon, I'm looking at you the exact same way." We stood there on the dock, the afternoon sun blazing down, the lake sparkling around us, and I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. One step forward and everything would change. There would be no going back. "What about Jake?" I whispered. "I don't know, I haven't figured that part out yet." "Your parents?" "I'm still working on that too." "And Chicago?" His expression cracked. "Yeah, Chicago." All the reasons this was a bad idea stacked up like blocks in my mind. The complications, the distance, the potential fallout. The smart thing, the safe thing would be to step back, to thank him for his honesty and keep my distance for the rest of the summer. But I'd been smart and safe my whole life, and I was so tired. "I deferred my job for you," I admitted. "I came back this summer because I knew you'd be here. I thought maybe if I could just spend time with you, I could figure out if these feelings were real or just some fantasy I'd built up in my head." And his voice was barely audible. "They're real, Ethan, they're so real it scares me." He closed the distance between us in one step, and suddenly his hands were on my face, tilting my head up. "Tell me to stop." "Don't you dare," I breathed. He kissed me like he'd been waiting years to do it, which I guess he had. His lips were soft and urgent at the same time, one hand sliding into my hair while the other gripped my waist. I grabbed his shirt, pulling him closer, 7 years of want finally finding an outlet. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead against mine. "We're completely screwed," he said. "Completely," I agreed. "Worth it." I kissed him again as an answer. We decided not to tell Jake, not yet, not until we figured out what this was between us, what it could be. It felt like a betrayal, keeping this from my brother, but the alternative, telling him before we knew if this was real or just summer madness, felt worse. So we became experts at stolen moments. Quick kisses when Jake left the room, hands brushing under the table, meaningful looks across the boathouse. It was exhilarating and exhausting in equal measure. "This is like being a teenager," Ethan whispered one night when we'd snuck out to the dock after Jake had gone to bed. "I wouldn't know," I said, wrapped in his arms, watching the stars. "I never got to do this as a teenager." He pressed a kiss to my temple. "What, sneak around? Be with someone I actually wanted?" I was so deep in the closet in high school I didn't even try dating, just pined from afar and pretended I was focused on getting into a good college. "Who'd you pine for?" I turned in his arms to face him. "You, obviously." 15-year-old me was an idiot for not noticing. 15-year-old me was terrified you'd notice. I was so awkward around you that year. He laughed softly. "You were adorable. You had this way of blushing whenever I talked to you directly." "I still do that." "I know, it's still adorable." I hid my face in his chest, feeling the warmth of his laugh rumble through him. These quiet moments were my favorite, no pretense, no audience, just us learning each other in the dark. "Tell me something," I said, "something nobody else knows." He was quiet for a moment, his hand tracing patterns on my back. "I almost didn't go to grad school for architecture. My dad offered me a job at his firm, good money, partnership track. My mom said I was throwing away a stable career for a passion project." "But you went anyway." "But I went anyway." It was the first time I'd really chosen myself over their expectations, and it was terrifying. I understood that, the weight of family expectations, the fear of disappointing people you loved. "Do you regret it?" "Not for a second. Even when it's hard, even when I doubt myself, I know I made the right choice." He tilted my face up to look at him. "Some things are worth the risk." "Are we talking about architecture or something else?" "Maybe both." He kissed me slowly, sweetly. "What about you? What's something nobody knows?" I hesitated, but something about the darkness and his steady presence made me brave. "I'm terrified of that consulting job. Everyone keeps congratulating me like I won the lottery, but the truth is, I have no idea if it's what I actually want. I just knew it was impressive, you know, the kind of thing that would make my parents proud." "What do you want, Bennett?" "I don't know yet. That's the scary part. I've spent so long doing what I was supposed to do, being who I was supposed to be. I'm not sure who I actually am." Maybe this summer can be about that too, figuring yourself out, not just us. "Is there an us?" I asked quietly, "or are we just, I don't know, getting it out of our systems before real life starts?" I felt him tense beneath me. "Is that what you think this is?" "I don't know what to think. You're moving to Chicago. I'm supposed to start in the city. We haven't told Jake. Your parents don't even know you're bi. This feels like something that exists outside of reality, you know, like summer magic that disappears when September comes." He was quiet for a long time. "What if I don't want it to disappear?" My heart skipped. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Chicago isn't that far from New York. I'm saying maybe we could figure this out. Long distance isn't ideal, but it's not impossible." "You'd want that with me?" "Bennett, I've wanted you for 3 years. I'm not interested in just a summer fling. If you're willing to try, really try, then so am I." I kissed him hard, pouring all my hope and fear and want into it. When we broke apart, I said, "We have to tell Jake." "I know. Soon." "I know," he sighed. "I'm just trying to figure out how to tell my best friend I'm in love with his little brother." The world stopped. "What did you just say?" His eyes widened like he hadn't meant to say it out loud. Bennett, I." "Say it again." "I'm in love with you," he said, and this time it wasn't an accident. It was a choice. I think I have been for a while now. I just didn't let myself believe it was possible. "I love you too," I said, the words feeling both terrifying and inevitable. I think I've loved you for 7 years, I just called it different things. We stayed on the dock until the sky started to lighten, talking about everything and nothing, making promises we hoped we could keep. And when we finally snuck back into the house, careful not to wake Jake, I felt like something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't just a summer romance anymore, this was real. The next morning, Jake looked between us at breakfast with narrowed eyes. Okay, what's going on with you two? My heart stopped. What do you mean? You're both being weird, smiling at your phones, disappearing for hours. Did you guys fight or something? Why would we fight? Ethan asked, his voice remarkably steady. I don't know, you just seem off. We're fine, I said quickly, just tired, the renovation's taking a lot out of us. Jake didn't look convinced, but he let it drop. As soon as he left for his morning run, Ethan pulled me into the pantry and kissed me, breathless. We're terrible at this, I gasped when he let me breathe. The worst, he agreed, then kissed me again. We made it through another week before everything fell apart. It happened on a Tuesday. Jake had driven to the city for a meeting, wouldn't be back until late. Ethan and I had been working on the boathouse all day, and we were both covered in paint and sweat when he grabbed me around the waist and spun me around, laughing. Stop, you're getting paint everywhere, I protested, but I was laughing too. Good, you're already a mess anyway. He kissed my neck and I tilted my head to give him better access. We should clean up. Or, he murmured against my skin, we could take a break. Jake could come home early. Jake's not due back for hours, stop worrying. He was right, I needed to stop being so paranoid. So when he kissed me, really kissed me, I let myself fall into it. We ended up on the new couch we'd brought in for the loft and I was straddling his lap. His hands under my shirt, when we heard the door open downstairs. We flew apart like we'd been electrocuted. Jake's voice drifted up. Meeting got canceled, you guys want to grab lunch in town? Ethan and I stared at each other, panic in his eyes that probably mirrored my own. My lips were swollen, my hair a mess, and there was a hickey on my neck I hadn't realized he'd left. Just a second, I called down, my voice too high. I scrambled off Ethan's lap, tried to fix my hair, pulled my shirt down. Ethan stood up, adjusting himself, running a hand over his face. Calm down, he whispered, it's fine, we're fine. But when Jake climbed the stairs and saw us, his expression changed immediately. We must have looked guilty as hell, flushed and disheveled and standing too far apart. What's going on? Jake asked slowly. Nothing, I said too quickly, just working. You're covered in paint. We were painting. Jake's eyes moved between us and I watched him piece it together. The weird behavior, the long absences, the way we were standing now, guilty and caught. Oh my God, he said, oh my God, are you too? Jake, Ethan started. How long? My brother's voice was dangerously quiet. Neither of us answered. How long? A few weeks, I admitted. A few weeks, Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. And you didn't think to mention this to me. We were going to tell you, Ethan said. When, after you left for Chicago, were you just going to let me figure it out on my own? It's not like that, I tried. Jake turned on me. You're my little brother, Bennett, and you're my best friend, he said to Ethan. Did you really think this was okay, sneaking around behind my back? We didn't want to make things weird before we knew what this was, Ethan explained. Before you knew what it was, what does that even mean? It means we're together, I said firmly. We're together and we're serious and we should have told you from the start. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry for being with him. Jake looked at me like he didn't recognize me. How long have you felt this way about him? I swallowed hard. A long time. Jesus Christ, he turned to Ethan. And you, how long? 3 years, Ethan said quietly. 3 years, Jake's voice rose. You've been into my little brother for 3 years and you never said anything. What was I supposed to say? Hey man, I know Bennett's your brother and all, but I can't stop thinking about him. Yes, that's exactly what you should have said, instead of lying to me this whole time. We didn't lie. Bullshit, lying by omission is still lying. They were squaring off now and I stepped between them. Stop, both of you just stop. Jake, I know you're upset, but this isn't just about you. Not about me, he's my best friend Bennett. And I'm your brother, doesn't that matter too? Of course it matters so much that this whole thing is completely screwed up. What happens when you guys break up? What happens when this summer fling ends and you go your separate ways? You expect me to just pick a side? It's not a summer fling, I said. Really? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you two couldn't keep it in your pants for a few months and now you're trying to make it into something more to justify it. Screw you, I snapped. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Let's see, you defer your job to come back here the exact summer Ethan's home. You moon around him like a lovesick puppy. And Ethan, you're so desperate to rebel against your parents you'll hook up with your best friend's little brother just to feel something. Jake, Ethan's voice was hard. You're out of line. Am I, or am I the only one being honest here? I felt tears burning my eyes and refused to let them fall. We told you we're serious, we love each other, doesn't that count for anything? Jake's expression cracked for just a moment, hurt flashing across his face. You love him. Yes. He turned to Ethan, and you. Yes, Ethan said without hesitation. Jake stood there and I could see him processing, struggling. I need air, I can't. I need to get out of here. Jake, wait, Ethan reached for him but Jake jerked away. Don't. He left and we heard his truck start up a moment later, gravel spraying as he peeled out of the driveway. The silence he left behind was deafening. Well, Ethan said quietly, that could have gone better, the end. If this story touched your heart, show your support by liking this video. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this. Your support keeps these stories alive, thank you.